Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today's video update for May 22nd, Thursday, 2025. On today's video discussion, we are talking about NOAA, which in just a matter of hours ago released their 2025 hurricane season forecast. And let's jump right to the gun with it. Here it is, the official NOAA hurricane season forecast for the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. They're forecasting 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, and 3 to 5 major hurricanes, with a percentage chance of an above normal season at 60%. So pretty much everything that we've been talking about over the last several months manifests in this hurricane forecast. They predict an above normal season, and they actually have an article here. NOAA predicts a above normal 2025 hurricane season. One of the reasons as to why the season is expected to be above normal due to a confluence of factors, including continued ENSO-neutral conditions, aka no El Nino. And that's something we've been going over and really hammering down every single week. We don't have an El Nino in place, and El Nino is certainly not rushing to develop. And it certainly looks like at this point, we're not going to get an El Nino to develop at all for at least the peak of the hurricane season, but especially how things are shaping up now, we're not even going to have an El Nino probably to develop at all this entire year. So ENSO neutral, warmer than average ocean temperatures in the Atlantic, forecast for weak wind shear, and potentially a strong African monsoon. Pretty much all of the same factors that have been in place for the last several years, in that which we've been producing these above normal hurricane seasons. All of those same factors seem to be in play once again this year. And I'll show you with the NOAA Coral Reef Watch sea surface temperature anomaly map. It pretty much lays out exactly what NOAA is forecasting as to why they expect this hurricane season to be above normal. And again, we've been going over these same conditions for the last several months, every single week. No El Nino here in the Pacific. In fact, the northern Pacific, or the subtropical Pacific off the west coast of the United States and the Baja Peninsula, very, very cold. It's a sign of what we call a negative PMM, which basically, it's like if I could say if the Atlantic MDR was actually cold, which is not, and that's also a plus for the Atlantic. But if the MDR in the Atlantic was cold, it would suppress the Atlantic, or at least the tropical Atlantic. Same thing pretty much here in the Eastern Pacific. The fact that we have a bunch of this very cold water temperatures out here across the subtropical Pacific really suppresses the tropical Eastern Pacific. And as a result, we'll probably not get a lot of activity, so there will not be a lot of competing energy between the Atlantic and the Pacific this year. And I mean, you could just take one glance at the Atlantic versus the Pacific, and you can very much see the Atlantic is definitely warmer. So there's definitely more energy stored in the ocean for rising motion in the Atlantic, especially throughout the MDR. We're warm, especially into the Caribbean, and boy, especially in the Gulf of Mexico. And the Gulf of Mexico is only going to get warmer from here on out, because now we're heading into the summer. We're heading into that summer pattern where we have the Bermuda high, which sets up over the southeast, the heat and humidity every single summer. And it even gets very bad here in New York. Probably not as long lasting as maybe in the southeast, but trust me, here in New York City, especially in July, it gets very hot, heat and humidity and thunderstorms every single day. But that's the pattern that's going to set up now over the eastern United States as we head into the summer. So lots of warm air from the Caribbean going to be pumped up northward, and it's already beginning. And the Gulf of Mexico is warming up a lot, and it's already warm, much above normal sea surface temperature anomaly wise, even off the southeast coast too. And this is all very significant because I've been warning for weeks that, here in the Western Atlantic, it's warmer, and that's where we look at early on in the season for development anyways. And besides, it's closer to where we live, and we've especially know the case of a bunch of these rapidly intensifying storms that occur closer to home, and that's especially been a lot of what we've been seeing over the last several years. So the fact that we have this sea surface temperature anomalies, very, very warm, closer to home, it's concerning. Adding on top of the fact that it looks like we're going to have an above normal season. And by the way, it's not just NOAA predicting it. Literally look at all of the predictions. And I'm using Wikipedia, by the way, but literally look at all of the predictions going all the way back to April, even December. TSR, I mean, maybe not super above normal, but still near average to slightly above average from TSR in December, and pretty much ever since, all of the forecasts have been either near or above normal for this hurricane season. So NOAA releasing their forecast today, calling for a pretty active hurricane season, upwards of up to 19 hurricanes, or not 19 hurricanes, that would be apocalyptic. 19 named storms, 10 hurricanes, and up to 5 majors. That is a pretty active forecast. And just looking at all the forecasts, just look at all of them going back to April. NOAA's not a lone wolf in forecasting an active hurricane season. In fact, the UK Met Office came out with their prediction yesterday, and I should have done a video on this. There was quite a bit to do a video on yesterday, and I'll show you why in just a minute, because we also have things that are actively going on right now, some of which we've been also talking about over the last several weeks. But sticking to UK Met, they released their forecast yesterday for the 2025 hurricane season, and they also went with active here. Tropical storm forecast, 16 named storms, and they have a range anywhere from 9 to 23. Man, if we get 23 named storms this year, that would be pretty insane. Hurricanes, they expect 9 from a range of 5 to 13, and major hurricanes, 4 of a range from 1 to 7, and this is also very important as well. The accumulated cyclone energy, not now. 154 above the long-term normal, of a range of anywhere from 61 to 247. That's much above normal, although I highly doubt we're going to get the very far end of this graph, but still also above normal, and pretty much adds to all the forecasts that we've had, including NOAA, that I just went over with you, that are forecasting for an above normal season. So I guess the summary is an active hurricane season in the Atlantic this year is looking increasingly likely, not just possible, but likely at this point, especially now that we're in May 22nd. We're less than 2 weeks away from the hurricane season. It's looking pretty likely it'll be an active one. But enough of how the season's actually going to be, because we actually have activity happening now, not in the Atlantic yet, although I'll go over why I think that might change over the coming weeks in just a moment. But in the Eastern Pacific, we've also been talking about this for quite a few weeks now. Well, not quite a few weeks, but for a little bit of time now, that something might show up in the Eastern Pacific once we get towards the end of the month. And sure enough, we now have an area of interest. I believe this is the first one of the season. But here we are, an area of interest off the southwest coast of Mexico, a 50% chance of development over the next week or so. Some sort of piece of energy, as we've been talking about, conditions are going to get more favorable over the general Western Hemisphere. We're going to get a Central American gyre set up, and some of that energy from the Central American gyre will likely result in something trying to form within the next week in the Eastern Pacific. And luckily, though, whatever does form will stay probably off the coast of Mexico. So if you're in Mexico and you're worried about anything potentially impacting you, I wouldn't be worried. And obviously for now in the Atlantic, things are nice and quiet, nothing expected over the next 7 days. But once again, I think that might change soon. I'll show you why in just a moment. But really quickly, let's go over the 12Z GFS, which is still loading right now. It's not even entirely loaded yet. And I'll show you, let's run through the model to show you what's happening in the Eastern Pacific. Nothing over the next 5 days, but notice once we get towards day 5 in the 850 millibar vorticity, I always talk about when it comes to the 850 millibar vorticity, when you're looking for something to develop, you are looking for energy to bundle and kind of centralize over a low pressure area. And you notice we start having lots of vorticity here in the Eastern Pacific. And then notice as we get towards day 6 and 7, the GFS has a little bit of fun, as it typically does. That's just how the GFS operates. But notice those are developed systems. It's probably going to be system, not systems. But the GFS is certainly showing development in the Eastern Pacific, and this is now as we head towards this time next week. So pretty much within a week time frame, the GFS is beginning to develop something, and the Euro is as well. Bottom line, there is something developing on all of the models. So this area here in the Eastern Pacific is not just some sort of random highlighted area that the National Hurricane Center is giving. And it's all happening because I've been talking about this for some time now, but conditions are becoming more favorable in the Western Hemisphere. And the perfect way to look at it is through the velocity potential graph. And you can see here as we head out into time, and as we get towards the end of the month, you start seeing a bunch of these greens begin to show up over our area here, the Western Hemisphere. This is kind of a key of the globe, of the map. And then this is the forecast for the velocity potential, and you start to see a bunch of these greens and I guess blues, and that represents rising motion in the atmosphere, a favorable MJO pattern setting up over the Western Hemisphere as we head towards the end of the month. And into the first half of next month. This carries out all the way pretty much till mid-month next month. So we're going to get something to probably develop now in the Eastern Pacific within the next week, because we obviously have something on the map. But once we get into the first half of next month, as I mentioned, this rising motion remains in the Western Hemisphere and actually slides eastward, and eventually begins to become more focused in the Atlantic. As you can kind of see, once we get further down the forecast, it kind of slides eastward and begins to encompass the entire Atlantic. And then as we head into early June, the start of the Atlantic hurricane season will be upon us. And we have favorable conditions moving in. You would assume, sorry, give me a second. You would assume that something might develop. And I think maybe as we head into the beginning of the hurricane season, the first 2 weeks, and I'm not the only one talking about this on Twitter. There's a lot of people mentioning it. From Joe Bastardi that mentioned it a few weeks ago, since the beginning of pretty much May. I even think from last month he's been mentioning it. And I know how people feel about Joe Bastardi, but he does know what he's talking about, and he is not always wrong. So I trust him. But Joe Bastardi, Andy Hazelton, lots of people talking about development occurring in the Atlantic in the first half of June, likely, especially as we get towards mid-June. And as you can see with the velocity potential, it certainly seems to indicate that. So we'll watch it to see if it does occur. But here we are with activity now. Hurricane season really close to starting, and it looks like it's going to be an active one. Before I end, really quickly, I want to go over what we are looking at for severe weather today, because I know that there's been quite a bit of severe weather over the last several days. We've had quite a bit of strong tornadoes. I remember there was one in Kentucky several days ago, and there was also one that struck St. Louis as well. And we also had quite a bit of activity over the last day or two. Specifically, there was a lot of strong tornadic activity over Kansas and Oklahoma. And we still have, unfortunately, severe weather today. We have an enhanced risk over portions of northern Texas, and also stretching into Oklahoma. The tornado risk, though, is low, so that's good. The main threat seems to be wind and especially hail. Well, actually, hail seems to be the biggest threat for today, with the 30% chance, and then in hatched area where we could potentially see large hail. For tomorrow, a slight risk over the mid-plains, over Oklahoma, Kansas, and then into Nebraska. And then we have a marginal risk that stretches all the way down to Texas, and also maybe some marginal severe weather over southeastern Florida, with the biggest threat seeming to be wind and hail, so not tornadoes, which is good, and then a slight risk over Oklahoma on day 3. So that would be I think Saturday, and then as we head into the day 4 to 8 time frame, looks like we will continue to have severe weather over portions of the southern plains. And then once we get past day 4, things seem to quiet down a little bit. Much needed given how much severe weather we've had over the last several days. And I hope that everybody that has been affected by severe weather recovers. If you lost anybody, I'm sorry for your loss. I have all of you in my prayers, and I hope everybody in there across the Midwest and the plains that is recovering from severe weather once again has a speedy recovery. And hopefully you'll have some time to recover over the next several weeks, as it looks like severe weather might quiet down for a little bit. But then we obviously got to worry about hurricane season. And once again, judging by what NOAA just put out today, it looks like it's going to be an active one. So gear up for that. And be prepared. If you are not ready for hurricane season yet, now is the time to do so. Now is the time to get your hurricane plan ready, all that stuff. As I always say, luck favors the prepared. With that being said, not much else to go over today, so I'm going to end it off here. Thanks for watching today's video. If you like what you saw, I would appreciate it if you like, comment, and especially subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you can get whenever I upload a video the moment I upload it, and share this video with family and friends as well. Stay safe, peace, love, and kindness to you all, and I will talk to you again on Saturday for our full weekly video discussion.